Okay, hi guys. So just to remind you to go subscribe to the Facebook, the Instagram, and the YouTube channel of Drumfield Cafe. Let's go for with the next guest. Is the author of the Drummer Toolbox. Is the co-author of the Best Beginner Drum book in collaboration with Jared Falk from Drumeo. Is a bachelor degree in jazz from Mickey One University in Alberta. Is the production director of Musora Inc. We'll talk about that later. And he did a lot of collaboration, Colin Stratahan, Brian Turgood, and others. So let's go check it out right now. Hi, my friend Brandon Toews. How you feel today?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for being on board.
Anytime, man. Stoked to be here.
Look, you have a great studio in the back, huh?
Thank you. Yeah, this is just my practice teaching space. Got some drums up here, and yeah, this is kind of my world when I'm not in the studio.
Yeah, you might have that studio tan during the.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Don't we all?
Well, what about the music CDs, the platinum disc? I can see like there's a few records there.
Yeah, I got a few things up here. I mean, this is just stuff that inspires me when I'm practicing. So I've got some photos of Elvin Jones and Max Roach.
Okay.
Stuff I used to listen to when I was a kid a lot. U2, Rush, Van Halen, lots of early 80s rock stuff like that. But kind of brings it all in and reminds me of why I'm doing what I do and where it all started. So, yeah.
Yeah, don't forget that. It's super important.
That's right.
Well, you have a cool background. I was checking your bio, and I knew you by names, and it's fun because you did a lot of things. And the only thing I don't know, did you start at a very very young age, or you grew up and you did the high school and you kept going until university? What was the starting point for you?
Yeah, I started when I was 8 years old. So I've been playing for about 15 years. I'm 23 right now. I grew up playing piano first.
Oh, okay.
And after I played piano for a few years, my parents gave me the opportunity to also play drums at the same time.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of my outlet to get into doing what I really wanted to do. So,
do you still play piano, or you stopped?
I play a little bit. I had to play through university. I had to take about 2 full years of piano and play lots of marimba and xylophone and stuff. But every once in a while, I'll get on the piano and just play around. But I wouldn't consider myself a piano player.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, man. There's a few guys I know they play very well drums and piano or drum and guitar, but I think it's important to know 2-3 different instruments except your instrument to have other way to think.
Absolutely.
You will have a bigger opening for like just for creating or like thinking when you play the drum, because you won't see only rhythms, you will see about harmonics and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And even when you're like, I find as a drummer, when I'm playing, being able to know what's happening melodically and harmonically, you'll react on the drum set differently than you would if you didn't understand what else is happening musically. So fully on board with that.
When you were in the university, you did a lot of orchestral like concert, like stuff like that. Did you choose to go in percussion when you were in university, or you did jazz and drumming and classical? Did you do both, or you only pick one?
Yeah, so the program was jazz and contemporary popular music. So those were the main focuses, but as a drummer, you had to enroll in percussion ensemble and these other areas where you would be playing classical percussion. And even within those ensembles, we would play contemporary music, but arranged for a classical orchestra. And so we did a lot, mainly as drummers, in percussion ensemble. So yeah, we got to explore lots of different instruments, everything from timpani to marimba, vibraphone, all that kind of stuff, which at the beginning is frustrating because you're learning something that you've never played before, right? But over the years, it definitely pays off, just giving you a broader spectrum of understanding in the world of drums and percussion.
Of course. I remember when I started to play marimba and xylophone, I was doing like 2 sticks. But when I grew up in my college, because in Quebec we had college and university after, I did with 4 sticks. And that is the switch to play with the sticks and opening and make the chords was hard. I'm not great now because I don't practice that for maybe for 15 years. But when I
Yeah.
was there, I was not too bad. But it's a
Mhm.
learning process. You have to keep going. You know.
Yeah, and when the first time you play with 4 mallets and you get all the blisters in between your fingers and
So hard.
painful.
So hard, man.
Yeah.
And just the foot because the marimba is so big. There's like a
Hmm.
few footsteps you have to learn to go reach the other notes,
For sure.
and it's like a dance. You have to learn. I remember I have a friend. He has his own slip, like a slide ish way to go around.
Okay.
But well, it's good because you have that. Some musicians will have only like one way, so
Hmm.
it's good. It's a good thing for you.
For
Talking
sure.
about that, you wrote a book, and you
I
wrote two
did.
books, but you wrote one book. What was the target to do that? When you were thinking about that when you were back to school, or is when you jump in the industry as a like music teaching, you realize you needed to do that? What was the starting point for you?
Yeah, so originally the first one that I wrote in collaboration with Jared Falk from
Mm-hmm.
Drumeo, that was a beginner focused book. And we put that out and it was well received. And what we wanted to do was provide something for that more intermediate level drummer.
Okay.
So we went back and forth with different outlines and topics that would cover, but we kind of decided that once you're at the point of an intermediate drummer, however you want to
Mm-hmm.
define that, you're really forced to choose sort of which style of music you want to get into,
Yeah,
because you could be a beginner jazz drummer but an intermediate level rock drummer. And so we kind of decided that styles was the next place that we needed to explore. So this was a project that it really hit me personally, because this book is something that I wished I had when I was learning all these different
yeah,
styles of music. So you
yeah,
could say it was almost a little bit of a selfish pursuit,
yeah.
but I wanted to make this as much for me as something that would help people who were in the position I was 10 years ago.
I got it.
So when I explain what this book is, I like to say it's the most comprehensive introduction to 100 styles of music.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're going through this book, you're not going to become an expert at jazz or an expert at Afro-Cuban music, but it's going to give you the information that you need to jump off into that style. It's going to give you history. It's going to give you recommended recordings to check out, which is a huge part of learning a new language, a new
Yep.
style of music. And it's going to give you some vocabulary and transcriptions from drummers who are known for playing these styles of music.
Of course, it's a good
So,
idea. Actually,
thank you.
it's funny you say that because you mentioned that too. Because I wrote a book in 2012, but it
Hmm.
took me 3 years to do. It's called Drumming Language,
Gotcha.
and it's a Bible of 100 pages, and
Hmm.
it's all there's no written history stuff like that. It's the only book you can bring in a gig, and you have all
Hmm.
the styles. Okay,
Yeah.
basically it's like that. And I remember if I could have that, if for example I can put that in perspective, like if that book was existing when I was in my beginning, like when I was
Hmm.
8 or 10 years old, I would have saved times
For
probably.
sure.
It's not because I wrote it, but I understand your point, because
Hmm.
when I was in my university time, I remember I received like a book big like that, only of referrals,
Hmm.
like listen that record this thing. It was
Yeah.
like maybe 30 pages of
Hmm.
only recording. So your book is great for that because the people will see the patterns, who play that well. Like
Hmm.
there's a history around that. Where they can get it, like on Drumeo website, or they're like, is there which platform is the best for
Yeah.
getting your book?
So yeah, it's available on Drumeo.com. It's available on Amazon.com as a physical hardcover book
Yep.
or as a Kindle book, and
Okay.
it's also available digitally on iBooks, Kobo, all the digital platforms as well.
Did you wrote all your by yourself, or you hire someone to wrote all the notes and
This
everything?
this one was all me. Everything, which looking back, it was a made like the scope of the project was massive in itself.
Oh yeah.
But part of me wanted to see through the whole project and learn all the steps along the way of what it
To
takes to
do it.
take, yeah, to do it from I'm
Yeah.
writing the book, just sitting there in a Microsoft Word document, writing the text, to
Ah,
going into finale, writing the music,
yep.
and then working with the designers and the distributors and the publishers well, we self-published it, but all the different steps along the way to self-publishing a book was a huge learning opportunity for me. And when I was doing that right from the get-go, I knew that this was a chance for me to understand a different area of the industry. So I just wanted to have my hands in every step. So it was a really great learning opportunity for me that's really helped me going forward with my career.
And it's good you mentioned finally, because I compare Sibelius and Finally. Both are very good programs. The only thing I call both, and Finally suggests me to go with one program without the bank of sound because I didn't have to, and I bought the licensing. It was cheaper to do that, and it was very easy to work with them at that time. And but I think it's like if you are used to work with Sibelius, you can go with it. It will work perfect. But on my side was like the same like you. I used Finally because it was making more sense how the way to write the drums easier. It's easier to write.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's totally what you're used to. Like going through school, we had to use Finale. That was just the program that was required. And that's also the program we've used at Drumeo since probably around 2012. So that's just what we've used, what I'm used to, and what I'm the fastest in. So
yeah, it makes sense. It's the same like with the Logic, or a lot of my students, they ask me like, is it better Cubase or Logic or Pro Tool? Well, at the end, it's recording. So if you're used to work with one tool, take it. Of course, Pro Tool will go maybe a little bit more advanced if you go with some console and all. But for normal user, like intermediate, I think all those programs are good. Whatever. If you just need to know your shortcuts and all. So and that's it.
What's going to get you the result the quickest, and what are you the most efficient in? That's the one you should use.
Exactly. Well, because we don't have much time flies, and so I have a few questions for you. So you mentioned now that's cool. It's your book. When you did the first book with Jared, did you wrote it, or did you you wrote some parts, or how you managed that to be two authors?
Yeah, that was like the majority of the writing fell on me, but he was heavily involved in the outline of the book and really getting the whole concept across.
Okay.
So I was still, well, technically this was before I was in charge of product development, but this was sort of the stepping stone into that. Okay. So a lot of the responsibility still fell on me during that project, but he was still heavily involved in lots of the production and the steps along the way there too.
Okay. So that's great.
Yeah.
Good experience too, huh?
For sure. For sure.
Talking about experience, what about your music part right now? Do you have a band, or like do you play like with singers or side projects?
Yeah, so right now, I guess during COVID, back in March, me and a piano player I work with pretty often, who actually works for Musora in our piano division, which is piano lessons, we finished writing our first album, which we're hoping to record next year. The tricky part with that is half of the band is located in Edmonton, Canada.
Yep.
And me and the pianist are located near Vancouver. So there's still some traveling things and rehearsal things that we'll need to work out once everything kind of normalizes and the world gets back to normal. But the music's written, all the charts and everything is finished. So that's one band that we have, which is, I would label that as more contemporary jazz with world influence. Really the music that we were studying in university and have really gotten into over the last 5 years.
Okay.
So that's my more, I would say, creative project that I have in the works right now. And then I also have a country blues rock band that plays locally just around the Fraser Valley and in Vancouver. Okay. Of course, all of that's on hold right now with COVID. So
yeah, well, but basically there's cover band.
Yeah, it's covers, and we're hoping to get into some original music once things get back to normal. So,
yeah, there's a great scene. I remember even not Vancouver, but Victoria on the Vancouver Island. I like the scene there. The downtown is pretty nice there.
Yeah, for sure.
Few bars with great musicians, great bands. So it's a very good area for learning music too. Well, just because I'm just saying that because I was in Vancouver like a year and a half ago, and every time I'm going in BC, it's always the same. It's like a good vibe, good energy, lay back a bit. So it's fun. I like it. But So, well, because I didn't know if you had been, that's why I asked you the question. But I know
Yeah.
you're a teacher online. Do you teach in person to person, or you're more online right now and it's online, that's it?
I would say mostly online. Right now, I have two private students who I just teach right here in my home studio,
Okay.
which I was doing back in high school, but I had to put that on hold when I went to university just
Okay.
due to time and having the space to actually teach. So I love teaching in person. It keeps your chops up, uh, and it's great because the two students I have, I would say, are at more of an intermediate level and want to pursue music as a career as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we can really get into some more intermediate and advanced level concepts, which is a ton of fun for me.
Yep.
But the majority of my teaching is online,
Okay.
which is a whole different beast for sure.
Yeah, of course. How you manage when you prepare like one lesson, for example? Because I know in Drumeo you did a few lessons, but I
Mhm.
mean, but there are different stretch of time. Some will be shorter, some are longer. How you prepare? Do you have a plan and you say, okay, I will do plain like A, B, C, D, or I will do only like a flow from the A and to the B? How you manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of the lessons that I'm doing now are mainly going on YouTube.
Yep.
I'll talk about something else I'm working on in a little bit, but uh, the workflow for that would be the lesson is going to be about 10 to 15 minutes at the most.
Okay.
So that goes by really quick when you're in the studio and you're doing playing examples and explanations.
Okay.
So when I'm going into the studio to film a lesson, I'll have a document with basically a full outline of what I want to get through.
Okay.
Everything from like essential points that I need to hit during the intro that's going to capture the listener like right away. Uh, Everything down to I need to play this sheet music example at 85 BPM and at 110 BPM. And so the entire outline of the lesson is basically written out. And
Okay.
typically there's a producer in the control room with the audio engineer, and they'll be on a talkback mic making sure that we get everything that we need. So that's sort of the workflow for a standard YouTube lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And the same would be if, say, David Garibaldi or Todd Sucherman's in the
Yep.
studio. There'd be a producer in the control room. They would be in the studio, maybe with a teleprompter with all of their points up there
Yep.
just to help them with the flow and guide them along. But that's sort of the standard pre-recorded lesson, you would say. And that ensures that you get the most clear and concise explanation in the shortest amount of time so that whoever's watching can get that information in the easiest way and with the least amount of work.
Yeah, it makes sense because people like it's different online teaching and like you said person to person. So online they want to go direct to the point and they would like maybe they would forward like fast forward or
For
they will
sure.
rewind the performance maybe 10 times for understand
Mm-hmm.
like what you just played. In person to person, like you said, you need to have your chop on. I mean, not chop, it's an expression, but you need to be
Yeah.
on it. Because if someone asks you, okay, can you do me like can you play like the I don't know, like Rick Layton solo number 2, so you have to be sure you can do it if you don't have good sight reading, like you have to be sure you
Yeah.
can play that thing.
Yeah,
So
and the other thing too is, every student is different. So,
yep.
I mean, when you're preparing an online lesson, you're hoping that this analogy is the most, I guess, centralized, you could say, and is going to connect with the vast majority of people.
Of
But
course.
if you have a private student and that analogy or that explanation doesn't work with them, you need to have another way to get that point across
Totally.
that connects with them. So it's just a different mindset and really keeps you on your toes with whoever the student is, just that you have everything prepared in a few different ways at least.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And it's right now with the COVID, that's a good thing you could do because you are used to teach online. Some people have to go with the flow and switch and teach online.
Exactly.
So, but it's not easy to reach that many people. And like if you start after the wave,
For sure.
if you were before that wave you can it would be less hard for getting student and reaching people, but
Exactly.
if you didn't do that before and now one of it's not a problem, but too many people are trying to teach online, so
Yeah.
it's not a bad point, but at the same time too many is not good too, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's the nature of COVID with people are trying to react to the circumstances, and of course, people are going online because that's just the way it is. You can't go do things in person anymore. But
Yep.
that oversaturation makes it, I would say, it's difficult for students because now there is such an oversaturation of information. How do you
Totally.
know where to go? And luckily for us at Drumeo, we've been doing this for so many years, and we've built that brand trust, and that students trust our platform. But if you're a new online educator, I think it's tough for you to get over sort of that barrier into this
Hmm.
new medium of teaching and selling your skills or your product. So it's definitely challenging for the music scene right now, in education and in performance. So I'm hoping things get back to normal and people can again harness their niche and the things that they do best.
It
But
will
it's
change.
yeah,
That
we're all
will.
doing
I
we're
think
all
we'll
doing
learn. We will have learned from that.
for sure. And yeah, I think everyone's going to have developed new skills and learn something about things that they didn't before. So
Exact. And before we go, we have a few minutes. I just want to ask you, tell us about Musora, because you're the product director. So how you became from university in drum jazz performances to a director of product and online. It's cool. I mean, I like that. I mean, for me, it's I'm the kind of person like that. I like to try different things. But how you became with that position is cool.
yeah, that's a great question, and this is a story I've told a few times, but it always
I
seems
don't
to
know. I didn't know.
no
Sorry,
no
man.
it's all good. So when I would say 16 years old, I was with my current teacher, who I'm still great friends with. I studied with him for about 8 years, and I made the decision that I wanted to go study music post secondary. And long story short, Jared Falk was a mutual friend on Facebook, and I ended up going to study privately with him at the Drumeo facility,
Okay.
because he was a local. He lived locally, really close to me. So I took lessons with him for about 2 years, and that slowly over time turned into helping out with VIP camps and doing some customer support, doing shipping, sending out DVD box sets when we used to do that around
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah.
Um, Anyways, then in 2015, after doing summer work and internships, I guess would be the best way to describe it, I went off to university, and I basically kept nagging him, saying, "I want to work. I want to
I want
work
to
when
work.
I
I want to
when I
work.
come back
Okay,
during
work.
yeah, let me work." Uh, During Christmas breaks and summer breaks, I made myself available, saying, "I'll do anything in the company, no matter what it is, whether it's sweeping the studio floor, whether it's creating lesson content for Jared to teach, whether it's me going in the studio or filming." Anyways, so I did that over the course of all 4 years, and slowly the work became different. So I started writing articles while I
Okay.
was in university. So I would be in class writing articles for the Drumeo blog. During third year, I was writing the Best Beginner Drum Book while I was in class.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
um, and by fourth year, I would go to school in the day. I would come home. I would write the drummer's toolbox for 6 hours until
Okay.
3 or 4 in the morning. I would
And
do that constantly every day. Um, and slowly, I think the first book and the second book were sort of the turning points where I sort of realized that this whole product development thing and writing books is something that I actually really enjoy.
mhm.
And it's something that I hope I'm actually getting good at. So when I finished my third year, I met with the team at Musora, and I said, like, I'm making the decision that I want to come back to the Vancouver area. Is there something here that I can do full time? And so they pitched a few different ideas, and the one we landed on was product director, specifically within the book area. And so that's where it started. And over the last year, I've been out of school for about a year now.
Okay.
That's turned into obviously still
Okay.
books.
And
There's a ton of new ones in the works right now,
okay.
but also working on curriculum development for
Mhm.
the new Drumeo method, which is available inside of Drumeo already. Working with different artists. So we've had lots of different artists out pre-COVID filming for the Drumeo method. So in addition to me being in the studio filming lessons, I've also been in the studio being the producer for the artist. So there's been lots of different things that my role has morphed into, but it all is sort of based around product development, whether that's a physical product or a digital product for the Drumeo website.
Wow! So congratulations for that. It's a good proof of a hard working and how you can achieve something on a long time stretch. You know, like not on just because a lot of people are thinking sometimes you're there because you're there at that moment, but they don't think about how the hard work you did in the back in advance, and you worked for your ass for like 4 or 5 years, and that's a super important point, and you deserve it. So congratulations for that.
And
go ahead.
One last point I'll add here that I always like to tell people when I tell this story is, so this started with just taking private lessons, but at that time I didn't know that that would turn into full-time work. So the way I like to look at that and tell people who ask me about this story is if I would have gone to a private lesson with Jared and I would have been unprepared and I didn't practice anything, I almost guarantee I wouldn't be working in the position I'm working in right now. So never underestimate the people that you're with and the opportunities that you have, and always put that 110% into whatever it is you're doing, even if it's a private lesson, because that could turn into something that you never expect down the road.
You never know, my friend. The first time I got my first big gig, I was recording, and it was because I met one technician, and the songwriter was looking for a drummer for doing a metal track on a TV program for CBC. And because of that, I've been hooked with Cavalia and Cirque. So I've been getting the gig, and I've been 3-4 years right now on tour. So you never know. It's very, very fast. So well, hey man, it's over. I need to let you go. We don't have much time, but thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And I'm suggesting the people to go check out your books, and they can look at you too, like on Drumeo and your website and Facebook and Instagram. So you're all over the platform, so they can check out. Do you have something you would like to add on to that before we go, or where the people can reach you?
You can reach me. Obviously, I'm active on the Drumeo site. Any of you who are members there, feel free to contact me. Email brandon@drumeo.com if you have any questions about anything. And I'm also active most on Instagram, brandon.toews. And yeah, I'm around. Find me online. Let's chat. And thanks so much for having me, man. This has been great.
Thanks, man. So I'll see you soon. If I go to Vancouver soon, I will go and knock your door and say, hey, what's up?
Definitely, man. Love it.
Take care.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Hi, guys. So now we're back with the next guest. Let's have a little presentation for that guy. There's a lot of things to say about him. I will try to shut it down. He's a clinician, teacher, drummer. It's a drummer for Broadway shows. I will just mention a few, okay? Getting the band back together, School of Rock, The Musician, Beautiful, Hamilton, Natasha. After that, there's Jersey Boy, Rock of Age, Spider-Man, Jesus Christ, Superstar, The Lion King, and many more, okay? It's an educator, consultant for the Sabian network. So go check that out. It's a very good channel to look at it. He won 4 Modern Drummer Reader Polls Award for his drum book, including the best drum book of 2013 for the Neil Per book. And he's an endorsee with Tama Drum, Sabian, Vic Firth, Evan, and LP. Go check out my friend Joe Bergamini. How are you doing tonight?
Eric, thank you so much for having me on.
I thank you for accepting it. Actually, I was so happy when you said, yeah, let's do that. And you're very down to earth. You reply quick. Thanks for that. It's a good thing to have.
My pleasure. I usually wait a little while before I turn into a jerk, you know?
Yeah, I do the same. But thank you. By the way, great setup. I was mentioning that, and just before we broadcast. Like, are you the kind of guy you always use the same setup, or you have different kind of setup depend of the gig you will do?
So on the gig, I'll change it up, but I leave this setup pretty much the same in here. I leave the basic setup the same, kind of the Jeff Porcaro vibe with the three
Yep.
rack toms and the. But I change the things on the side. But the basic setup is what I came up with years ago to kind of have a big kit, but have it feel like still a small kit.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool. And how do you record? Are you using Logic Pro or Cubase? Or what kind of program do you using for your microphone and setup?
So I have to admit I'm not the biggest expert on it. I've actually only just begun. I had for years a microphone set up through a mixing board just for a practice environment, so I could play my iPhone or my iPad through the board and a metronome, and I could sort of like replicate an in-ear monitor mix.
Yeah.
Play with hearing protection, because my hearing is damaged and all that. But anyway, now I have Logic. My son actually is a drummer. We have Logic. I'm slowly learning it. He's better at it than I am. I bought a PreSonus 16-channel board, and I've actually been recording just with Capture and Studio One Pro.
It's perfect.
Yeah, and it's been really good. They have really cool plugins. I mean, I don't endorse the product, but it's pretty easy. On my YouTube channel, when I have like my drum covers, I just use that, and then I'm running. I just run whatever 12 mics in, and it's I've been able to send out my first few recordings with it. But
anyway,
drum lessons too.
That's what I wanted to say for teaching. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because you're lucky, because so many people during the COVID situation, they don't have access to their drums. And the other day I was talking with someone, I was mentioning him. I know someone, he couldn't even not play with a pad because the neighborhood and the people living around the condominium didn't like the rebounds to hear the clapping. So some people, they just cannot play drums. Yeah. So you're very lucky to have access to a kit in your basement.
Yeah, I actually, I've been teaching. I studied with Don Famularo. He was my mentor and my teacher, and he inspired me to teach. I started teaching when I was 20, so I've been at it for 30 years now. My gosh, is it that long? I feel old. But I always, my wife is a school teacher, and as together we looked for a place to live, I had to have a place to have my drum studio. It's been so critical to like have my students here, to have my practice space, and I always I always thought when I have my own place to live in my house, I'll have my dream drum room, and so it's and so now it's it's a godsend to have it because I teach from here, I go live from here, and everything happens here. So spend a lot of time here, so I'm happy with it.
That's perfect. Tell us about you, because I read your bio, but I knew you by name before, but I don't know how you start to play the drum. Why you choose the drum? Why you didn't choose to play the guitar or the flute or the keyboard back in the days? Who have been influencing you to play the drums back then?
So my story started with the drums. My parents weren't really very musical. At 13 years old, I turned on the radio and I heard a Van Halen song, a Journey song, and most importantly, a Rush song. The Rush song was Subdivisions. And I became addicted to Neil Peart and his playing. So I played, and I just said, I want to play the drums. My parents gave me lessons. I took lessons and played on a pad for 6 months until I stuck it out long enough for them to get me a kit.
I want a kit.
Right. And then once I had the drums, I just really went down the wormhole. I played along. I probably played along to songs for about 3 hours every day. A lot of it was Rush. He was my hero. He's my favorite.
Neil Peart have been influencing so many drummers, man.
He was the poster on my wall, and I've talked about him a lot on other interviews. But he was my hero. But I was also into like all the groove bands. At the time I was coming up, it was in the mid '80s. So I was listening to like ZZ Top, Iron Maiden, Dio, Ozzy solo, and then I went back and discovered Sabbath and Zeppelin, and Night Ranger was popular. And so I wasn't just playing the technical stuff; I was playing the groove stuff too.
Yep.
And I guess I could play a groove because I had my first gig about 3 months after I started playing drums, and I was just saying to my students today, I have a gig September 12th coming up. and it's my first gig since. This is by far the longest period of my life that I haven't done a gig with other human beings, and it's killing me. But yeah, so that's how it started. And I joined bands in my neighborhood, just played with all the local people and listened to all the drummers, and played in school band. I played in everything that they offered, jazz band, and then I had my rock band. If they were having like a bake sale or something, I'd be like, you need a band for that. We played everywhere, we played.
School of life, man. School of life.
Totally.
You learn from that because when you're a drummer, you can be a metal drummer or a punk drummer or a samba drummer, but if you have touch all different styles, that will help your vocabulary as a musician and your future because you're going to get more gig.
Totally. And I guess I always knew that, but so like, for instance, I played at the school musical. We played Anything Goes or some Cole Porter thing when I was in high school. I never really had a goal of playing on Broadway or dreamt, but it worked out that I did. And it worked out that way because of exactly what you said, of working on all the different styles and just being ready to play anything that came my way,
And by the way, you need to be versatile. You need to have a lot of, you need to know styles and follow the musical director, just follow what's going on stage. It's another thing.
I know you know that.
Oh yeah, but just maybe I will repeat myself. But you were mentioning Neil Peart, but one day I was playing I was in Santa Monica, and after the show, so my friend, the sound engineer, told me, he's like, Eric, go to the VIP room. Neil Peart is there. He was watching you playing tonight. I'm like, probably not. So I went, and Neil Peart was there. So I've been introduced. He watched the show totally, and finally we hang together for 1 hour. He saw my drums. We talk about, but he's so cool guy. I'm very fast for learning quick. I'm not the fan guy with picture like after 5 seconds. So and actually I didn't ask, and we talked, and I realized he wanted to talk about traveling, bikes, like life, not about drums. So we talk about 5 minutes about the setup, and after that, we're talking about so many other stuff. And that's a cool story. And one day, I was at DW factory, at Drum Channel actually, and I picked one drum, and one drum was already set up on the studio, and John Good showed up and he's like, hey, you picked the kit from Neil Peart. So I'm like, oh, okay. They have a kit for him when he was practicing. So all the time, that was his kit. So and I have a little story with him, because when I was a kid, he influenced me too, like a lot of drummers. And yeah, maybe someone heard that story before, but that was my story about Neil Peart. So.
Because not that many people met him because he was very private.
Yeah, he's super cool. That's why I'm telling. I think I was mentioning he didn't want. I feel we couldn't talk about music. It was more like human being energies and motivation and talking, and like natural person, and I really like that. And yeah, I didn't push him. He wanted to just walk around. So it's a cool guy.
That's great.
Just back to Broadway, because we don't have much time. It's about 20-25 minutes, so the time flies fast. You work in Broadway for a lot. How many years? Like in different shows, like from your first show, let's say.
The first show I did was in 2003. I started subbing on the Billy Joel musical "Moving Out" for the great Chuck Berge, and then from there, it's all about, you get one shot to go in as a sub and play and kill it. I practiced that show until it was like I could play it. I knew it better than my own name. I could play it. And so from there, some of the guys in the band were also subbing at Jersey Boys.
Okay.
And me there, and then it became just getting recommended around town. So then from there, I went to In the Heights. I subbed eventually on about 15 Broadway shows. Some of the highlights were subbing at The Lion King for Tommy Igoe.
Wow.
My great friend and great drummer. Including for Tommy when he would conduct sometimes. And then eventually also for Larry Lelly, another great Broadway player at School of Rock, for Gary Seligson. Larry Lelly was at $1 Million Quartet, Gary Seligson at School of Rock. Clint Deganon, I subbed for Clint at Jesus Christ Superstar Revival and Beautiful, which is another great one.
Yep.
And then my friend John Weber at Rock of Ages. There were other ones. Okay. And eventually I got my own show. It was called Getting the Band Back Together, but it kind of bombed. It only lasted for a couple of months. It's kind of a crap.
Sorry, but you got other shows after that anyway.
Yeah, once you are known as a sub and people know that you can be relied on as a sub. You're kind of in the scene. So, but I've done a lot of it, and it's not always relaxing. You're there to do the job right. You can't make mistakes.
Yeah, but actually, Drumfills Cafe, it's an educational kind of channel. Do you have any cues for the young blood, the young drummer? They are dreaming to do Broadway shows or like big production like that. How they can prepare to be less stressful, because it's actually stressful. But do you have any cues for them?
Well, first of all, there's a lot more people now that want to be involved with Broadway than ever before, and part of the reason why is because it's so high profile now. You have Hamilton, you have all these big shows. It's also in New York City. It's where all the best players are. It's become the most reliable work. So, if you're going to break into doing something like Broadway in New York, it's like breaking into recording in Nashville or LA. Like you're going to be maybe a big fish in your town. You're going to come to a place where everyone's a great player. So your playing has to be at an extremely high level. And if you get a chance to go in and sub, now when I say it's nervous, when I was getting ready to play the show Hamilton for a sub for my great friend Andres Ferrero, who I subbed for it in the Heights, I said to the conductor, Alex Lackamore, like, Alex, I'm really nervous today, and I knew Alex already. And Alex said to me, I'd be worried if you weren't. You're not, if you're not a little on edge when you go to play that first show, maybe you don't really understand so I think the way to quell the nerves, to answer your question, is I don't really know. The only way I know how to do that is to over prepare. Just when when I sub these shows, talk about Neil. I was in a Rush tribute band for 10 years, right?
Wow.
And, when you're in a tribute band, you learn the parts note for note, right?
Yep.
When you sub a Broadway show, that's how you learn the show. You don't. It's not the time for you to impress everybody with your polyrhythmic fills.
No, odd meter, no.
You're there to learn it the way the other guy plays it, and then when you get a chance to craft your own show, your own book, that's when you can be creative. And the last thing I'll say about it is, and I credit this for Tommy Igoe because Tommy said this. People had asked Tommy, "How do you become a great Broadway drummer?" And Tommy's answer was, which I agree with, that's kind of a terrible idea. The idea, and his logic, which is, listen to his logic. His logic was, learn how to play great drums in rock, jazz, Latin, fusion, funk. Become just a great all-around player. That's what Broadway players do. It's not a special style.
No.
When you play Rock of Ages on Broadway, you have to sound, it's real rock drumming. Million Dollar Quartet was like, it's like you have to play the stuff the real way. It's not like show drumming. The show drumming thing comes with following the conductor, taking direction, playing with a click. But if you're playing in the Heights and you don't know how to make the kashkara sound legit, the other players are going to know it in a second.
Yeah, you cannot lie. That's good cues. Another thing is, I think, like as you said, over prepare, but I'm sure you need to have a good base of reading. Maybe not sight reading complete, but you need to know how to read music, and those are like cues and lead sheet and things like that. Because some of my students back in the days were like, I don't want to learn music. I want to learn, but I don't want to read music. I'm like, yeah, but you will have a better approach when you go. It's easier, faster. But this is a good example. I'm sure you have to read a lot of charts.
Yeah, the reading thing, it's funny. When you sub, you have to practice so much to be successful as a sub that you actually don't need to be a great reader to be a sub.
Okay, it's good. Good.
Like it's prepared reading. By the time you play the show, it's like a set. It's like, oh that. Like, but yes, you have to be a good reader. But see, what happens is, you certainly have to be a good reader. Don't get me wrong. But it's not like, okay, so now you start breaking into New York, and now someone asks you to do a recording session, or someone asks you to do a workshop of a new show. Then they throw charts in front of you. Well, if you survived the subbing and you're not a good reader, someone's going to eventually find out when you go to a session or a workshop and they put up a chart and you can't do it. So by all means, don't you need to be, look, you don't, not everyone needs to be the greatest reader in the world, but you have to have a workable knowledge. You don't want to be the person slowing down a session or a
No.
workshop because you're messing up your figures.
Totally. Yeah, totally. It makes sense. Changing topics, connecting. Let's go with the Sabian educational channel. How challenging is for you that? Because it's a great challenge. You're reaching a lot of people. It's a lot of like good cues, talking about music, drumming. It's so large. So how you became working for that channel? I know you play Sabian, but you could not play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you for saying that, first of all. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but once I got into playing and established my playing career, one of the things that Dom always told me to do was to go to conventions and the NAMM show, PASIC, and be around the industry. And I started to get involved with the industry, go to those things. Then I got published. Writing and editing books, as most people who know me know, it's a big part of my career. So I had books out. I was working with Hudson Music as an editor, and doing clinics. And I knew a lot of people in the industry, and I worked on different educational projects. About 7 years ago, I guess it's like 7 years ago now, Sabian, in addition to me loving the cymbals, they always have been very positive on education. And they wanted to create a program to give something back to and support the drum teachers.
Okay.
And so they basically just approached me and they asked, knowing my educational background, if I would be the person willing to direct and help them design this program. So I had this wonderful opportunity of Sabian wanting to give back, and I got to design. I kind of envisioned, and we came up with this idea of it being like a club for drum teachers, basically. And
it's a cool idea.
It's like what we're doing now. It's like trading ideas. Like before we went live, we were talking about how to get a better signal in your drum studio and what gear to use.
Yeah.
We're talking about what books to use. And I kind of envisioned it like hanging out with my drummer friends, talking about all the stuff like we do, except it's on a website. If you're interested in it and you teach, it's sabianed.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go there and you can sign up, and then you get access to the website. And as you mentioned, I've been going live at least once a week. I'm actually doing webinars for like a few years with it now, but now with the shutdown, I'm going frequently. So it's a challenge. So it's a challenge. The challenge is to juggle. So like
okay.
I've always had playing, teaching, and then my industry stuff, which is editing and Hudson and Sabian. So it's been a challenge to juggle it in on some level, but I kind of like being busy. I'm a workaholic, so I just mix it in. But yeah, thank you for the program has really become a gathering place for drum teachers.
Yeah, but I think you're a good example for a successful career, because you have been doing drumming and Broadways, editing, working with known companies. So you can be proud of that. I'm not just want to throw flowers. I'm just saying like you're a good example for when you're kids. When you're a kid and you're thinking what I could do. You've done so many good avenues, because we need to be honest. Like if you only focus on one thing, sometimes it won't necessarily work. Like for example, like now you cannot play, but you can edit. You can teach. You have other avenues you can take during a situation like that, and it's like that for everybody. It's a roller coaster. Like sometimes we'll play more years, and 1 year will be less playing. So yeah, I think you have a great achievement there.
What's interesting about that, Eric, is that a lot of my drummer friends, both well known and not so well known, like just for example. Guys like Steve Smith, Neil Peart, Tommy Igoe, Todd Zuckerman, Simon Phillips, who I've had the pleasure to meet, and then I'm thinking of all the guys I know in New York, and all my drummer friends. Everyone has other interests. What Bill Bruford called life beyond the cymbals, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I certainly love practicing and playing drums, but some of the other things, I'm one of those guys who I love teaching. I don't do teaching for extra money or I love it.
No, you like it. Yeah.
Some guys love it. Some guys may not. There's no judgment. Some guys might not like it, and girls might not like it as much. But my point is, I always had a little bit of an interest in writing. I always had a little bit of an interest in how you run a business. I always had some interest, these different things.
Yep.
And I always figured, like, why not? Maybe some of them can help be a kind of a facet of the diamond of having a career.
Yep.
Besides relying on the big gig. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, if Sting called me tomorrow and I could go out on a huge rock tour, I would.
So, okay, let's go.
I certainly wouldn't stop. And in my touring, I still do all the other things I do. I teach remotely. I've enjoyed that, and I'm happy to advise people. I have pro students who we talk about that, develop in other parts of their career. But yeah, I'm interested in all of it.
And you were mentioning you were editing. You did a book, and you won in 2013 or 13. Like you had good reviews, and yeah, sure. Yeah, I saw that book, and so how you started to, where and when you decided to write a book like that, because it's not something. You need a lot of be involved. I mean, in the project, and you need to write all the charts, all the approaches. How you started to do that back then?
So the way it started for me with the book thing was very natural. So I just started transcribing drum parts, like a lot of us. I just thought it was cool to transcribe, and I started getting better at it. And then I started trying to learn how to. I went to school to be an architect. I have like a
yeah.
So nice and neat. So I learned how to do finale, and then I sent my charts, a couple charts, to Modern Drummer, and Modern Drummer published the charts. And eventually, Modern Drummer gave me a column called Rock Charts, where I transcribed a song every month. And then eventually, two things happened. One was Modern Drummer asked me to write a book of transcriptions, which is this book, Classic Tracks.
Yep.
And then Dom Famularo asked me to help him lay out and publish It's Your Move, which is his classic.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So once I did those two books, I really wanted to do more of it. And I started from, again, going to the trade shows and things. I got to know people at some of the publishers, including Warner Brothers. And then they asked me to do they would basically ask me to do project for hire. Like, will you transcribe Zeppelin charts for our Zeppelin book? Or will you, and then eventually I would come with some ideas.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was very natural. I went from the transcribing thing, and then I did a couple projects. And then when I did the Zeppelin book, I had to write the text to go with it. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, I used to like to write, and I'll write the text.
I can do more. Exactly.
I got back the proof, and the copy editor had put red lines on my mistakes. So I went to my English books, and I'm like, wait a minute, and I got interested in that part of it, and then I started getting better at the writing, and so then after I had about, I'd say, 9 books out, Dom and I started a company called Wisdom, which is some of his partners in that company. And then a friend of mine asked me to become an editor for Carl Fisher, the publisher Carl Fisher.
Yep.
And I was like, sure, what does an editor do? I had no idea. And
but what?
All these things, all this industry stuff I learned on the job. Someone trusted me and I ran with it, and what's the objective, and did it. So it was kind of naturally going from transcribing articles, a transcription book, writing a drum book, then learning how to edit a drum book. Then I got asked to be an editor. And then one day I was at a drum clinic and I saw Rob Wallace and Paul Siegel there from Hudson Music.
Yep.
And I literally just walked up to them and said, I'm an editor and you guys are the greatest. And I don't know if you're ever looking to hire anybody. And they said, you know what? We might be interested. Why don't you send us your resume? So I went home. I made a resume. I didn't have one.
They said, yes, I will send it to you, and you're back.
And they about 10 years ago now, or maybe even, I guess it's 11 years ago now.
Wow.
Rob and Paul brought me on. Paul's no longer with the company, and I've been their editor for a long time, and it's been it couldn't be better. I mean, I get to do projects and books with Steve Smith and Keith Carlock and Aaron Spears and Mark Giuliano, all my my friends and heroes, and David Garibaldi. It's really the greatest gig. Hudson
for sure, man. It's a lot of good contacts, and you're making friends if they were not your friends at the beginning.
So yeah, and it's actually learning from these guys. I'm getting paid to learn from them. I mean, I'm working on books and I'm practicing the stuff, and and now Steve Smith will send me a video. Hey, check this one out, and I'm like, it's really.
Let's go. Hey man, it's over. It's done. Well, time is flying so fast. I think we could talk for another hour together, and you have amazing stories to tell. And I'm sure that the people watching the show they really enjoyed it. So where the people can reach you? What are your best social media?
So I think if you're interested in the books and stuff, you can go on joebergamini.com. And when I'm touring, my schedule is there. I will again at some point.
Again, so
I'm on Instagram. Just search me at Joe Bergamini, and I'm also on Facebook. I have a fan page and a regular page. I keep all of them equally updated. So just Instagram, Facebook, and joebergamini.com. And any questions about anything I said, feel free to email me or message me. And
yeah, they can write a lot of people write stuff in the chat too, so we can always look at the chat. Thanks, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I really wish you good luck. When I will back around New Jersey, I will stop for a coffee, and I will tell you when all that will be done. When the borders will be reopened, I will stop to say hi.
That'd be great. I look forward to it.
Thanks, man. See you later. Bye-bye. Hi, guys. So let's go with the next artist. I will say that guy influenced me a lot when I was a kid playing drums, and is still one of the best metal drummer we have, and very honest person, very honest player, and that reflect on his playing. But let me introduce him first. He started to play drum at 16 years old. He did a lot of great albums like Judgment Night, Soundtrack with Ice-T, Divine Intervention, great album by the way, Undisputed Attitude, Diablos and Musica, God Hate Us All, I like that album too, and Repentantless from Slayer, another one, amazing album. He played with Slayer, Testament, Exodus, Forbidden, and is a Evans, Yamaha, Paiste, and Vader artist. Let's bring him. My friend Paul Bostaph, what's up?
What's up, Eric? How's it going, man?
I'm good. I want to mention, like, your house were almost burning yesterday, and now you're here. So I would like to say to the people watching the show, thanks for being there. It's super nice, but you could stay safe. You know what I mean?
Oh no, look. I mean, we like, I think a lot of people know now California's been like basically inundated with wildfires caused by lightning strikes. We had a weird storm come through here, really weird. And I guess we had a fire it's like 650 acres by my house somewhere. And me and my wife and my cat, we just packed up some things and we left for a couple of days because the first day it happened, the winds were blowing towards my house. And I'm like, yeah, let's leave and then kind of feel it out. So it's good to be home and it's good to be talking to you.
Well, stay safe, man. Stay safe if you can.
Thanks.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I didn't know you started to play at 16 years old. How did you start it? Like, I mean, you saw drum on TV and you said, or like, I don't know, like you say, whatever band playing drums that I want that, or you have been introduced by someone playing about the drum. I don't know. What was your story about that?
Well, I mean, when I was a kid growing up listening to music, I didn't get to listen to rock and roll very much, but anytime we would go somewhere with my dad, like to the dump, my dad hated rock and roll, but every time we'd go to the dumps, he'd let us listen to a station because we'd help when we were little kids. We'd go to the dump and help him. So he'd let us listen to a song on the radio. And so we'd always want to put on the rock station. So every time I heard the rock station, the two things that always stood out for me were the drums and the vocals. I just always loved those two things. Because when you're a little kid and you're first introduced to something, you'll pay attention to all the nuances maybe, but for me it was just those two things. And then I remember later on, because I got into sports and stuff, probably about 7 years later, I remember sitting watching TV. It was a public broadcasting station, and they had a Rod Stewart concert on stage, on the TV, and this was in black and white. You know, you still had to get up and change the dial. You know, so
the clicker,
the remote control. So,
exactly.
But I remember watching that concert, and Carmen Appice was playing drums.
Oh yeah,
and I was at the time I was really into sports, like I said, and I played soccer. That was one of my favorite sports to play, and it was the only sport my parents would let me play. But that being said, I remember watching that concert and just being fixated on Carmen Appice, and I'm just like, he was twirling sticks and just, it was killer. He was playing
Oh,
great.
he's a killer, still a killer
What's that?
player. He's still
Oh,
a
he's a
killer
great
player.
player. Yeah, he's a great player. I like Eddie Money, the artist Eddie Money, and Carmen Appice played on some of his first albums, and it's just great rock and roll drumming,
Yep.
And so he was the first guy I saw play, and I remember watching him play, just fixated on him, and it was almost like it was meant to be. And I'm like watching him play, just thinking, man, it's like this guy, if he messes up once, the whole band is just gonna like. It's obvious for any drummer or any artist. Like if a drummer messes up, like the whole band's gonna be off,
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a big responsibility. And I was like, that sounds like a responsibility I want to have. And I kept watching. At the end of the concert, Rod Stewart, that I didn't know, he was a semi-pro soccer player when he was growing up. So at the end of the concert, he went back and he grabbed these soccer balls and he kicked these soccer balls out to the audience. And I was just like, oh, that's it. It was like a combination of the two. I'm like, and so for me, like one of the first things I ever wanted to do was play drums after watching that show and seeing Rod Stewart kick soccer balls out of the crowd. I'm like, someday I want to do that. And I got to actually once, which was great.
That's cool. Yeah. That's a cool story. But it's fun because you have been in a lucky family to have a background of music with your family. There's not everybody they can have like some connection with rock and roll or whatever other style. And I know some kids they are not connect at all with music, and one day they will realize, well, I missed that. So I think that was good, even if your family was not like musician. But I didn't ask you, your father play some music or not at all, instruments or nothing?
My dad never was really. My dad wasn't a musician, but my dad was kind of a ham. In other words, like he would love to dance, or like he'd pick up a guitar and he knew a few chords and he'd sing a song. He wasn't scared about dancing, or like he'd come in my bedroom when I would practice drums, and when I was not very good, and he'd come in and start talking to me, and he'd sit down, grab my drumsticks, and he'd just start playing stuff on the snare drum. He was an auto mechanic, but he raised 7 kids, so he never really had a chance to explore art, as it were. So yeah, no, he was never, but my brothers and sisters, like 2 of my brothers play guitar. One of my brothers is a really good drummer, my brother Pete. And then my brothers play great guitar too, by the way. But my sisters all played violin or something else clarinet when they were growing up. And I guess my mom played a little bit of piano, but we never heard her play piano. I guess she was too busy raising kids. So
yeah, 7 kids, it's a lot.
Yeah, but yeah, no, there was a lot of musical diversity around me in the house. My mom liked jazz, that kind of stuff. My father listened to big band, and I heard way too much Bing Crosby growing up. My dad loved Bing Crosby, but I heard a lot of big band, which Benny Goodman, Glenn Miller, like stuff. A lot of stuff people listen to anyway. My brothers and sisters, it was very diverse. My older brother, I got into real rock and roll by listening to what my older brother would listen to, but then my older sisters were into funk and soul and Van Halen. They were really eclectic, and so there was all of that in my house. And just as a short version of the story, when I was a kid, I traded one of my brothers. I don't remember what I traded for. I don't remember what I gave him, but he wanted something I had. And since we were such a big family, we weren't very spoiled kids. So like he had this transistor radio. It got AM and FM radio, small radio, just real small, like you just put it up to your ear. So I traded him for something, and there was a station called KFRC in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they played everything, top 40. And top 40 in the 1970s was that, like Grand Funk Railroad, American Band was on the radio.
CCR, maybe.
CCR, but that's just rock and roll, like Earth, Wind, Fire, the Commodores, like you name it.
Yeah, the Commodore,
P-Funk. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the radio back then. So like even then, I got a lot of diverse. A lot of musical diversity from that.
I think that have bring you your soul, your signature, because when you play drums, I remember I noticed that the first time I heard you in my life. You have a very unique way to play your drums, and it's cool. I mean, like in metal, some people, let's say someone never listen as rock metal music. Okay, they will only think is like bashing something super fast. You know what I mean? Like for someone, I have no background of that, but I remember like the way you snap your snare, your bass drum are very in front of your face, but super tight. But you have a soul. You're grooving, and yeah, and it's cool because actually yesterday I will send you the link. My friend Michel from Quebec is a death metal drummer, and he just recorded how to groove into metal music, and I will send you the link. It's kind of cool, and that was remind me you when you play like you have a soul, and I think that is important. It's not because you're playing fast you don't have that soul, that signature, and particularly I would say something with quantizing and trigger and all those stuff in studios now. It's way different.
It's funny. There's you just kind of hit the nail on the head. Technology is a really beautiful thing. It's a good thing. Like quantizing, snapping everything to a grid. That's not really human. You know what I mean?
Nope. Yep.
It's like you're having a computer iron it all out, and it sounds amazing. It's like it's a really interesting thing. But then there's the other side of it.
Totally.
Like when I was a kid, I'd listen to LPs, records, and those records had when you put them on, there'd be dust in the grooves, right? And now people sample that sound sometimes, where you hear that record playing, and you hear the dust. Like actually, you can hear the needle drag over the dust in the song, right? Yeah. And that's dirt. That's And so as I got older, I started talking to friends who played better, more funkier than I did. I was not a very funky player at all. I listened to a lot of it, but I played more metal. And what I think connected the dots for me with metal with two drummers was John Bonham and also Bill Ward.
Great.
As I got older, after I did my first record with Forbidden, actually, my whole life, my brother's friends always said, you got to listen. My older brother's friends always said, you got to listen to Physical Graffiti. Even my older brother, listen to Physical Graffiti. It will change your life. And I'm like, yeah. I was too busy doing all my other stuff. AC/DC, listening to, Phil Rudd. Love Phil Rudd.
Yep, Phil Rudd's amazing.
Another big influence on mine. But when I remember I was on tour with Forbidden in Europe on the first tour, and I was the guy who would load all the equipment in the bottom of our bus. So we were on tour with Sacred Reich, and I'll make this really quick. But the band would hand me stuff. So both of our bands, Sacred Reich and Forbidden, were sharing the same bus. So we had 19 people on one tour bus, which was insane and a lot of fun, but there was no room. And so we shared a common backline. We shared all our gear. So I was the guy who could figure out how to. The first day we're scratching our head, and how are we going to fit all this gear down here, and then have 19 people on a bus. I told the guys, said, look, you guys hand me the gear, I'll figure it out. So I was the guy. I was hunched down in the bass, just pushing all the gear, and we got it. We made it happen. So what happened at that point? When I got done, by the time I got done loading everything, all the guys were already, like Sacred Reich was on stage, and all the guys in my band were already inside watching Sacred Reich, drinking beer. So I would be done, and I'd come on the bus. I'm still sweating from coming off stage, and I just loaded all the gear, and I'm like, okay, I'm on the bus by myself. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, this is great, Yeah. So I remember just like going, man, I just need to just mellow out for a second. It's like 2 weeks into the tour or something. And I remember just like everybody's inside and like I'm by myself, got the bus to myself. You don't get that. There's always somebody that's going to be on there. Anyway, make a long story short, I put in Physical Graffiti. And I remember listening to it for the first time. I had my first beer and I was like, oh, this is great. And then I remember going, this album's amazing. And it's kept. And so for that entire tour, it just became this thing. Once everybody was in the club and I'm all great, I just go in the back lounge, lay on a sofa and listen to the entire album. And people would always come on the bus after and like, man, where were you? I wasn't the bus. And I'd just be like, and all those guys were like still like in that energy, right? And I was just relaxing, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I really, like, the next record I did was Forbidden, Twisted into Form. Actually, that song Twisted into Form was directly influenced by John Bonham beat for me, and it didn't sound anything like Bonham because he's a master. But yeah, no, throughout my career, I listened to a lot. I mean, the funnest thing to do, and I'm sure you can appreciate this, is that the funnest thing to do for a drummer, for me, is to groove. You know what I mean? Just to play a simple groove with a wide open hi-hat, man, or even a close hi-hat. It's just like, that's just like, man, like, especially if you're like, for you, like, you play in bigger productions, right?
Yep.
So you're on stage, you have monitors, you get to hear your drums and your band, or
oh yeah, like that. Yep.
Yeah, you get to hear it a different way, as opposed to like being, so it's produced. For me, like, when I get to groove on stage with Slayer, for instance, like, sound check can be fun, because I'll just get up there and just play a simple groove, and I don't get to do that during shows because it's usually the fast. Sometimes it grooves, but when you can play like a groove that you heard, like anything, just anything that inspired you during the day, and you can play that on a big PA system in a big room, big
Sounds
auditorium.
Great.
Oh my God. It's like, I'm like, wow. It's like,
oh yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, you just mentioned it, like Bonham. I remember when I listened to him first time. I don't remember how old I was, maybe 12 or something. And I remember super groovy, and I was like, whoa, this, I like that. And there's a few drummers like that. I remember like Vinnie Paul too. Like when I was kid, I remember I've seen him. Like was like, whoa, that's a cool drummer too. Yeah, he has his own signature too. And like you said, sometimes big production is cool, but sometimes not. I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I am used to do like 2,000 to 3,000 people, let's say every night, 6-7 nights a week for years. But when I do a show in front of 50 person, I'm freaking out. I cannot describe, because everybody are close to me, and I'm like, okay, this is weird. So, but I know a hard point to describe, but for me, it's weird.
No. That's funny that you said that, because we share that in common, you and I. When I'm playing in front of like 10,000 people or 5,000 people or whatever the number is, if it's a large crowd, I'm not nervous, right?
Don't care.
But if somebody, like, if I do like a drum clinic and I have to do a solo in front of, or if I'm in a room full of people and it's 5 people, right? And then they want me to play it, do a solo or just play something, I'm nervous.
Like,
I'm like, oh my God. I think for me, I think the closer people stand to the drum, to me, when I'm playing, the more mistakes. I just keep thinking I'm going to make a bunch of mistakes. That's just me. It's a weird insecurity I have. But I was going to mention 2 other drummers too, by the way, in terms of the groove thing.
Yep.
And one of them, and this is funny, his name's Leonard Hayes. Played in a band called YNT, Yesterday and Today. The first YNT record is called Yesterday and Today. And if anybody can get a hold of it, you've just got the drumming on that record is just awesome. And he's got it's like he just does some really like single bass, really fast stuff. There's a song called Beautiful Dreamer on that album.
Okay.
You probably can Google that. And it's just,
I would.
It's got such a great groove to it. And I actually, on Twisted in a Form, I tried to channel a little bit of Leonard on there, which was really hard to do. But I think because Leonard, I always said Leonard was I think he was in his youth, I think he was a Ludwig guy. And I think everybody in the 70s mostly were Ludwig guys. Not everybody, but
a
but
bunch.
I think he was a Ludwig guy. But he sounded like John Bonham on steroids. And I was like, this is great. And there's another drummer. I can never get his name, because it's like, but he played drums for Heart.
I know. I know who you're talking about. But well.
Yeah. So the song, for instance, Barracuda, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, like most people, know that song. It's a very popular song by Heart, and it's just, I've heard that song so many times. But but it's funny that I stopped listening to that. I had that album when I was a kid. One of my sisters had it. And so I started listening to it because Barracuda was on the radio. There's some other great, that guy just can play drums. He's got like Bonham-esque tone. He's got great groove, and he's actually still to this day, an amazing drummer. And I don't think he gets enough credit. And just even that groove for Barracuda, it's kind of like, I think Heart was kind of influenced by Led Zeppelin, but that if you listen to that album, listen to the drums on that record, it's very like Ludwig, and it's just the grooves are dirty. They have dirt. It's got dirt. There's dirt in the grooves, man. You gotta have dirt in the grooves. I think that's all there is to it, man.
So cool. It reminds me, I was watching the Woodstock documentary a few days ago, and talking about dirty. It's super dirty, the old one, the 70s. And when Jimi Hendrix goes on stage and all those bands, they didn't have much microphone and miking system at that time. And it sounds very cool. I mean, the groove is there. It's wow. Imagine at that time.
Dude, don't get me started. Okay, now you did. So you're thinking about Mitch Mitchell, right?
Yeah, Mitchell. Yeah, Mitchell.
Dude. Yeah, you talk about throwing one microphone up in a room and just raw drum tone. That's what it's. That guy just you can hear it. Like you can hear the grit, right? But you know that the Woodstock. One of my favorite performances from Woodstock is going to be Santana.
Yes,
my dude! I watched that performance. First time I saw it was a video called Viva Santana.
Yeah,
I know that. Yeah. So what a great video that was. But that performance, the way Carlos explained it, like I know him, like Carlos Santana explained it, in Viva Santana, is that they just didn't. They were so young, and they just really. It was just they didn't really. I guess they didn't really know what they were doing. He said. Which kind of makes sense because they were just doing it. And that's how it kind of was when I was Forbidden when we were young. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just doing it. And there's a beauty in that. And it's awesome. And but the drummer, Michael Shreve.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like Michael Shreve, I don't hear his name talked about enough, at least in my circles at all.
Oh, me neither, but I know him.
His performance. I mean, the whole band's performance was impeccable. All the percussionists, everybody was amazing. I mean, you name it. Greg Raleigh, Carlos Santana, you name it. Everybody. But the drummer, just the behind the drum set, Michael Shreve ripped that performance up. It was amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's all is there. It has an ambience. When you I can imagine be there watching that. I will be like floating in the air, even with no drugs, because everybody were passed out. But I mean, over there watching it, I'm sure I will have a good time. But the time flies, man. And I have a few questions. Actually, we talk about, because we could talk for hours. With me, no worry, I can talk forever. But we'll try to respect times. My friend Frank wants to ask you if you have a lot of freedom to create your drum tracks with Slayers, or it's common, or it's a band partnership. How it works when you create? You bring your ideas, or they give you ideas.
So I always have my own idea of what I want to do. Always have an idea. But when I joined Slayer. Slayer was already successful. They had a framework. They had something that really worked, and I understood that. But for instance, Kerry and Jeff, and I find this with almost anybody I've worked with, knows, like especially Slayer. Kerry and Jeff, like Jeff would give me, he would create like a cassette tape of an idea with drum machines. So he'd play the drum fills and stuff. He'd program everything with his idea. And he'd have me learn that idea, and then if I could come up, I remember asking Jeff, said, if I come up with an idea, because I have ideas, they said, but if I have an idea that is different than what you have, are you guys cool with that if I try it? He's all, yeah. If it sucks, we'll just use what we already have. So that's kind of what it was. So there was a framework already set up, and they let me do my own thing as long as you have to. So I understood the best way to explain it is this. I understood when I listened to it, what's good, right? I already know it's good. I know what it's going to sound like. So what we would do with Carrie and Jeff is I would start out with their ideas and then play their idea first. And then once I knew that idea and knew it well, then I would try to change stuff. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, they liked my changes because it would augment what they did. And I would throw something different into it that they weren't thinking about that they really liked, as opposed to me just trying to do whatever I want to do. And that simply was not going to work with a band like that. That's called starting your own band. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But as we got as we got to know each other better, and they became to trust me more.
There's a trust,
yeah. They would sometimes, like with Carrie, like on the first record, sometimes like in Divine Intervention, he'd say he'd have spots where he knew what he was going to do, and then he'd go, and I said, "What do you want me to do here?" He'd go, "I don't know. Do whatever you want to do." And if it's, you know, so then as we got to know each other better, and as musicians, all of us, they trusted me more. Because they liked my ideas, so they would open it up more. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so that, so I was able to inject my own style into it. For Divine Intervention, to say this, to answer your buddy, we had a year to work on that record. 1 year. I mean, I was so ready for that record. It was ridiculous. I was taking rehearsal tapes home, and listening to what I would do. I sometimes I overwrote some of that stuff. You know, I wrote drum fills to guitar riffs, but I love it too. So, you know,
it's a passion. You're passionate about what are you doing? You're a passionate person, so you really want to put your art on the table and make it the best album every time. So that's I think it's normal. If you're a real artist, you want to give your best, you know.
Well, I appreciate you calling me an artist, man. You said that earlier, and I was like, man.
Yeah, it's an artist. You're an artist, man. I mean, you're a successful person, but not just about that. An artist is a complement of a lot of stuff. You're playing drums. You're musical. You're doing art with different bands, and you're like well. The only thing you're not an artist, you don't have that ego, and keep it like that. You are like a good person, down to earth, and we love that. You know what I mean? It's a joke, but I mean, I just because sometimes there's people they're trying to step over, but stay like the way you are, and we appreciate that a lot.
Dude, I'm too old to change.
Well, I can. Yeah. Well. Time fly. Like I told you. I won't have the time to ask you everything, but I know you mentioned me before we start the broadcast. You have some coming project in 2021 with what are your project? You didn't want to tell me, but you wanted to tell me in the recording.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to be Carrie King and me and myself are going to carry on, and when we get a chance, we're actually going to record a record. Carrie's already got he's got about 24 songs written already.
Well, that's a lot.
So, and he's been sending me material, and it's great. So if you like Repentless, if you like the stuff that Carrie and I have done,
oh yeah,
what it's going to be, it's going to be what it is, and in other words, it's Carrie's been writing that kind of metal forever, and I love it, and I love playing with the guy, and I like what he writes, and it's fun. So. So hopefully we'll get a record done in 2021. I'm hoping. We would have already had a record done and probably been on tour this year, but as you well know, and most touring artists know, that's kind of shut us down right now. Mm-hmm. But when we get back to business, we'll have a new record, and it'll be exciting.
Who will sing? Who is the singer? Is it Carrie or is it no?
Oh no, I don't think it's going to be. No, it's not going to be Carrie. That being said, now Carrie will sing, but. No, I don't know. We haven't had a chance to get into a room with anybody. So, part of, we already have 2 other guys that we want to play with. We already know them. We know they're good musicians. We know that we get along with them, but that's already established. But the singers, they're the wild card. So, I think getting into a room with somebody, seeing how it works, seeing how the personalities work, because you don't want to do one record and have it fall apart. We want to do more. We want to make it last for a while and have fun. So because it's what we do, But so we haven't got a singer yet. We're looking, as best we can, during this pandemic. So, but and also just as another one last thing.
Yep.
Anybody's interested in taking lessons from me, you can sign up for lessons. I think you can find it through my Instagram. You can go to my Instagram. It's Paul Bostaph. It's got the blue check and the information for signing up for lessons, or go to my website. So yeah,
your website is good too. Your website is super nice too. Easy to go around, so the people can really see a lot there. Do you? I think you have a lot of information. If the people wants to know more about your album coming out and all those stuff, I'm sure they can find out all those information in your website too. Well, I found a lot on your website.
There's not a lot of information about the new band on my website.
The new band,
but not yet. But in terms of just go to the website and look around, and if you want to take, anybody wants to take lessons from me, it's fine. You can. There's access to that there, and yeah. So
well, hey, thanks, man. It's over. It's done. Sorry about that. I need to cut you here. We need to do a part 2. So it's like that.
Anytime, Eric.
So thank you for your kindness to be there and to tell us a lot of stuff. I'm sure you could talk about a lot of this story forever. So that we like that. It's kind of cool. So stay safe, please, and be in touch, man. Thanks to be on Drumfill Cafe. Thanks for accepting it. We are appreciated. I'm not the we. It's my team. We appreciate that.
Cool. All right, dude. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, buddy. Bye. Well, thank you very much. So you can subscribe on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube of Drumfill Cafe for more information. And stay tuned.